Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Network. You must be as terrified or more than I am about, these constant threats that Trump has caused against FBI, you name it, right? Prosecutors, FBI agents, judges. So Judge Cannon scolded a member of Jack Smith's team during a hearing on in Trump's case, saying, "I don't appreciate your tone." Smith said that Trump's remarks about the FBI were not only false, also dangerous. He said it was amplified by Truth Social. Judge Cannon seemed to have a hard time discerning a direct connection between Trump's message and any palpable threat to agents working on the documents case. Well, Frank, when Trump says, "Oh, they were here to assassinate me," that puts a target on every FBI guy, right?
There's a phrase for what Judge Cannon is doing, and it's called willful blindness. And she is looking the other way on all of this, and that's the kindest thing I can say to her. There is an absolute palpable threat to FBI agents and prosecutors right now, and it's coming from the top, meaning the top of the MAGA problem, and that's Donald Trump. I interviewed, we released the interview yesterday on my YouTube show called Frankly. I interviewed Andy McCabe, former acting director of the FBI, who of course was fired 26 hours before his retirement eligibility. And now here again, he was threatened by Trump back then. Now we have Steve Bannon saying twice, "We're coming for you, Andrew McCabe. You can run, but you can't hide. We'll extradite you from some other country if you leave the country." So here we go again with the threats. And for Judge Cannon to say, in the day and age when the FBI has had to stand up a unit to do nothing but deal with threats against FBI agents, we're having weekly arrests of people who are trying to kill FBI agents, and she is choosing to ignore it and pretend she's dumb. She's not. She has an agenda.
Yeah, Frank, he's going to get someone killed, and I just feel like we're all just like waiting, clenched. If ever there was a case for a gag order, it's with Trump. Frank, I really did. I have to say, in these news cycles, I do not get to read books a lot. I read the entire book on the plane back from Denver, Sexy Liberal, and it is terrifying and fantastic.
You're very kind, and thank you for reading it. Look, it was tough to write. Never mind tough to read. I had to get my investigative hat back on after 25 years in the FBI, and I hit the road for over 2,000 miles in a big rig to try and understand the long haul culture. And just to throw some numbers at you, people often ask me, "Frank, what possessed you to write this true crime book about serial killing?" And I said, I prided myself in the FBI, thinking I knew all the corners of the FBI, Stephanie, and post-retirement is when I found out that the FBI's Highway Serial Killings Initiative is still very much going strong, and the numbers are staggering. 850 murders of women alongside our highways, 200 considered unsolved and open, 450 suspects being looked at in the long-haul trucker community. Yeah. And that's why I'm writing the book.
But, Frank, I also thought you made such a good point about that obviously the vast majority of truckers are hardworking guys, and also that this is, we owe them a debt that, like, our country runs because of all the stuff that, that they bring across the country all over. So I think, and also the fact that, a lot of the help they get is from other truckers in terms of solving these cases. But, Frank, talk to us a little bit about, because I thought it's so interesting with the debate coming up Thursday. We also had one of our right-wing callers that calls all the time that that Trump is going to do this, fill in the blank, so-and-the-so girl was killed by an illegal immigrant, right? And, I just have to say, you make the point in the book, as, obviously Chris Wray and others have, the vast majority of these killers are white American men, right? These...
Oh, for sure. So, first of all, thank you for bringing up the reality we all know, because we all have food at the supermarket and on our tables that's been brought to us by truckers, and grocery stores would run out of goods in 3 days if truckers stopped trucking. So I partly dedicated my book to the American trucker. But you are right. When we have these headlines of death and destruction from migrants, it's disturbing. It should not happen. We should be getting our act together better to vet who's coming in here. But the reality is that violent crime is down, that cities who receive the most migrants, undocumented migrants, have crime dropping.
Thank you.
So, the headlines should be that we're killing ourselves. In fact, by the way, the FBI just yesterday released its latest active shooter report, and we are killing ourselves. 105 active shooter incidents, killed people in active shooter incidents last year, the most in recent history. So we've got to keep things in perspective.
And Frank, it shouldn't really even be partisan. Of course, all of our hearts break when any woman is murdered. As you write about in your book, is when anybody is raped or tortured or murdered. But the fact is, and you know this statistically, undocumented immigrants commit crimes at far lower rates than the rest of society. And I thought your book just was so, it was chilling, like you say, that there's now linked 850 killings to long-haul truckers. And I loved I don't know whether feminist is still a dirty word, but as a woman, as a feminist, I appreciated so much your, focus on these women that are victims of sex trafficking and are often targeted because these guys think no one will care about them. Right? Because they're prostitutes, they've been sex trafficked, they have drug problems. But talk about that a little bit.
By far, the most moving part of the book and the research I did was my face-to-face interviews with women who have survived violent encounters with long-haul truckers and lived to tell about it. Two of them helping to run resource centers right now. In fact, a portion of the proceeds of the book go to help 4 different resource centers who help women get out of trafficking. Their stories were literally tear-inducing for me. And the trauma they've been through. The heroes in my book happen to be women. And I say happen to be because, I didn't plan it that way, but the victims are women. And not only that, the woman crime analyst who started the whole program of looking at serial killings by truckers was a female crime analyst in Oklahoma's State Bureau of Investigation. She's the one who, instead of, the detectives telling her, hey, go get us some more coffee, back in 2003. She's the one who said, no, you wait a minute. There's 10 girls dead around the country who came from Oklahoma, and I think we have a serial killer. That was when the FBI came in and said, you do have serial killers. They are truckers, and we're in on this initiative.
Yeah. And it's so heartwarming, this, stories toward the end of the book about these women, being helped and coming out of this, because I think it's a self-esteem problem too. As you say, many of them, fell victim to men like early on, in terms of, who then brutalized them. There was violence that was, forced them into sex trafficking. A lot of them, then were addicted to drugs, and that was what was feeding it. And so I think this, what do you call it? Psychologically, economically empowering women is one of the most uplifting parts of your book.
Yeah, it's funny. I learned a lot doing the research here, and no matter the socioeconomic background, the race or ethnic background of the women victims I talked to who survived truckers, there were the commonalities that the experts told me to look for. They all had the early childhood trauma, often in the form of unwanted touching or worse. Then they had a tower of trauma in the family, domestic violence, you name it, it happened to their families. And then the bad boyfriend or series of bad boyfriends, early introduction to drug use. Then here comes the hard drug use. Then essentially the boyfriend becomes the groomer, the pimp. I get deep into that process in the book.
Yeah, no, it is terrifying, and I wonder too, my perspective as a gay woman, I thought, oh my God, these poor women, but just in terms of, giving them the self-esteem to not think they have to be dependent on a man, because it just, like you say, it led to such dark places, sadly, for so many of them. Well, I mean, let's talk about, oh my God, some of the names they've been given. The truck stop killer who rigged a traveling torture chamber in the rear of his truck is suspected to have killed 50 women. The interstate strangler who once answered a phone call from his mother while killing one of his dozen victims. So this is why the FBI opened this special unit, right? The highway serial killing initiatives. You talk about from a crime point of view, why it's so hard to solve some of them, because they sometimes abduct them in one place, kill them in another place, dump their body in another place, so it crosses all these jurisdictions, right?
Yeah, you've got an 18-wheel mobile crime scene with these trucks, often in very open, isolated stretches of highway, perfect for dumping bodies. And you're right, the challenge here for law enforcement and where the FBI database and help comes in is just what you said. They're exploiting the gaps in law enforcement jurisdictions. They're grabbing the victim in one territory, raping and murdering her in a second territory, and then dumping the body in the third. That makes it really hard. Add to that, Stephanie, that there's no family members who even know that their loved one is missing, let alone dead. There's often no ID found on these bodies. I have cases in the book that took decades to put a name with a body, let alone find the killer. And the guy you mentioned is Robert Ben Rhodes, the most notorious evil long-haul trucker I came across. And yes, he tortured and raped women for weeks on end before killing them. It's 25 years in the FBI. I thought I've seen the worst humanity was capable of, but I was wrong. It's the cruelty and evil I saw in these long-haul truckers.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we were saying, especially those of us in radio, we have a lot of trucker, as you mentioned in your book, a lot of people, truckers listen on Sirius XM. And again, I'm glad you made the point because many of them call and they honk their horn for me, which is one of my few joys in life, Frank. But, I'm glad you made the point that, I mean, Mike, the guy that by the way, that was hot. Your stories of like hauling pipe and I don't know.
Stephanie, stop it.
He worked as a long-haul trucker with a guy named Mike for weeks, and it's peed in a jug, and that was hardcore, Frank.
I slept in the sleeper berth. Boy, that's not the Ritz-Carlton, let me tell you. And peeing in a gallon jug, because this guy, much younger, he wouldn't stop. And I'm like, hey, buddy, time to go. He's like, yeah, there's the gallon. We were part of the U.S. economy. We were hauling drywall to the housing industry. We were hauling lumber. We were hauling aluminum pipe that we delivered to a DOD ammunition manufacturer. We were the economy during that journey.
Yep. Well, and again, thank you for, saluting all the women that are helping these women and helping them come out of, and women that have survived it and are helping others. I saved this tweet for you. One of my favorite stories of January 6th is the women who went on dating sites afterwards, found the perpetrators, and turned them into the FBI. I love women. They will save us in November.
There's case after case after. Let me tell you, there's multiple January 6th cases where the scorned girlfriend or wife has gotten her revenge. Let me assure you.